The Purple Line is a community podcast bringing you in-depth conversations with diverse leaders in the public and private sectors. Whether you're a student looking to gather advice or a professional tuning in for valuable resources, our dynamic programming provides tips for all ages and backgrounds. I'm your host, Keith Fernandez, and this is The Purple Line. On today's episode, I'm sitting down with former Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, a CHLI founder who is often referred to as CHLI's madrina. Ros-Lehtinen served for almost 3 decades as a member of Congress representing South Florida. She previously served in the Florida House and Florida Senate. Ileana is the first Hispanic woman elected to Congress, the Florida Senate, and the Florida House. She's also the first Cuban American elected to Congress. As a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Ros-Lehtinen was instrumental in passing legislation to advance human rights, security, and dignity at home and abroad. Her area of focus included Israel, Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and other crucial nations. She is the first woman to chair that committee, and she is a former chairman of the subcommittee on the Middle East and North Africa. Ileana has been a consistent voice for democratic movements in all corners of the globe. Starting with her native homeland of Cuba, in opposition to the Cuban regime, she has been and remains an outspoken advocate for freedom, democracy, the rule of law, and human rights. Former Congresswoman Ros-Lehtinen now serves as the senior advisor at Aiken Gump in Washington, D.C., and serves as a corporate board member at CHLI. She also serves as chairman of the CHLI We Belong Scholarship Campaign. Ileana is a former Florida certified teacher and holds several education-related degrees, including a doctorate in education from the University of Miami and a master's and bachelor's degree from Florida International University. Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, thank you for joining us on the Purple Line, walking along the Purple Line. How are you doing?
Well, first of all, if you call me Congresswoman Ros-Lehtinen, I just may, the way I could be. I don't know what I'll do. You have to call me Ileana or Illy, but not Congresswoman Ros-Lehtinen. And maybe the viewers and the listeners don't know how much I love Keith Fernandez.
Oh my gosh.
He has been the lifeblood of our congressional office for all those years, got me out of trouble, and was just you weren't even a staffer. What do I call you? You were my legal counsel, you were my communications director, you're a wonderful friend, and you are remaining a wonderful friend. Yes. And now I see you being a big shot here and there, but you're still my little Key.
Oh.
Key. That's how we call him.
It's the best thing, and best experience of my life, and love you so
Keith,
much.
You are a real part of my personal life, my professional life, and Dexter and I are honored to be part of your life as well.
I'm so honored. I'm so glad that you guys are part of my life, and we're so close now. I'm giving you candle recommendations. So this is where we're going.
If the people only knew what a nice place. You're not getting paid enough. I'm not going to say that. But he's living large, and this place is spectacular. And I want to thank Nicole, our wonderful production assistant, CHLI fellow, who is doing an incredible job behind the camera.
She really is. She really is. And, you know, one of the things that I love about this podcast is the ability for people to learn from trailblazers like you. You're the first Hispanic woman in Congress, first Hispanic woman in the Florida House, Florida Senate, first female chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, first Cuban American in Congress. I can probably list a lot more, but that took the whole time. So I think one of the things that is really interesting to me, because I did not know you back then, back in 1982, you were a Florida certified teacher. You are still a former Florida certified teacher.
Keith, were you born in 1982?
No, I was not.
So when I was first elected to public life as a state representative, Keith Fernandez, the gentleman who's interviewing me, was not even born. Oh my gosh.
But
I'm old.
In Miami, I could have voted at that time. So,
but it was just having to be at the right time, at the right place, because I had no idea that I was the first this and the first that and the first that until people pointed it out to me. But it has been a life of public service that I have enjoyed tremendously, because whether you're a state representative, state senator, member of Congress, or everyday life, and you get to help so many people, Keith. And I know when you were part of our congressional staff, that's what you enjoyed the most. Helping people, whether it's citizenship, their residency, their social security benefits, veterans benefits. I mean, service to the community.
Yeah.
That is what we love to do. And anybody can be great, as Martin Luther King said, because anyone can serve.
Yes, absolutely. And that really brings us to one of my major questions about why you first ran for public office. 1982, you were owner, operator, teacher at a private school in Hialeah. And I've got to say, for so many people, young people who are probably listening, they're going, I want to take that big bet, whatever that is, go into that big job, maybe run for office, maybe be a leader in their community. I think people think about these major decisions for a while sometimes. And what day did you wake up and say, well, I've never been in politics before, but I guess I can run to represent my community in the state capitol and do what I need to do?
When is that moment? First of all, you shouldn't wait for that perfect moment.
Yeah.
If you wait for the perfect moment to get married and to have a child and to get this work, that moment will never present itself. So for me, Keith, it happened because I loved what I was doing. I always wanted to be a teacher. And I remember my parents were so proud when I became a Florida certified teacher. I had that certificate. And that was the epitome. I said, well, I've accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish. Little did I think that there was still so much left to do. And I helped a lot of students and a lot of parents, and helping Pedro y Jose y Maria. Somebody told me, rather than helping these people as individuals, as worthy as that is, you could run for office, set public policy, and help a lot of people. And I said, hey, run for office. Nobody in my family had run for office before. My wonderful, mi hermano legislativo, Lincoln Diaz-Balart and Mario Diaz-Balart, they come from a storied Cuban political family, a dynasty like the Kennedys. Yeah. So they had politics in their blood, but not in my family. And so my dad said, well, let's see how this goes. I think that you would be good at it. I said, oh, all right. And we signed up for a GOP campaign school. Honest to goodness, Keith, it was just like a little introduction, a Saturday and Sunday. This is how you run a campaign. My dad went to the campaign manager's unit, and I went to the candidate unit. And they told us, this is how you run for office. And because we had no idea of how you really run for office, I was a great candidate. And my dad was a wonderful manager, because they said to us, you've got to knock on 10 doors every day. And you've got to make 5 fundraising calls every day. And so we did it. We said, okay, this is what you have to do. And I think now people are kind of spoiled. Yeah. And they don't do the hard work. But we really did. And all those doors that we knocked on, Keith, I enjoyed it. The more I did it, it was a very shoestring campaign, just my family and friends, and they helped every day, and I loved it. And I said, wow, this is a lot of fun. And so I want to say that it was a great sacrifice, but I have found in my many years of public service that helping people gives you a sense of satisfaction. And it makes you feel good to help others. You have a servant's heart. Yeah. I have a servant's heart. So it was a lot of fun. I met a lot of wonderful people, and to help people is the best thing you can do. So it's been a wonderful life. Now I'm retired from that life, but I'm still in the service of others.
Well, I absolutely. And speaking of people you met, you soon thereafter met your now husband, Dexter Lehtinen. He was a Democrat. You're a Republican. You changed into a Republican. Yeah. Wonder how that happened. And you two really helped reshape state law in Florida. And I know that folks talk about, the federal part of your lives. Dexter was the former U.S. attorney. He put Manuel Noriega in jail. Yahweh Ben Yahweh, he had huge cases. But you guys really had an impact through the Florida Prepaid College Program, which you authored and passed throughout the Florida House and Florida Senate, the Victims of Crime Amendment to the Florida Constitution.
Absolutely.
But you guys were also parents in your 30s, and for the listeners, you guys represented 2 different districts, so you had to switch homes to maintain residency requirements. So I guess
exactly.
And so I guess the question I've got is for all of us who have less hectic lives than the Lehtinen, how did you guys manage your time so you were able to accomplish so much? Because I think that's a question that young people have today. They feel overwhelmed, but here you guys
life is overwhelming. It is true.
Yeah.
It is true. And there's so many choices and so many opportunities. And sometimes you think, how can I do it? And you just live your life and you live day by day and you plan and you do the best you can. For me, I did it so successfully because of my mom and dad. Yeah. They were dedicated to me, to Dexter, and then to our children. So we bought the house across the street literally for my parents to help us with our kids. And Abu Kiki and Abu Mandi, they were just terrific people. You knew them so well. You know how much they admired and loved you, Keith. And my parents, for me, were great role models because they leave everything behind in Cuba. Yeah. You know, they're in their early 30s, and they never look back. They said, look, we're going to work for a free Cuba, but this is our home. So my dad, with his limited English, went to Miami-Dade Community College, graduated from there, went to the University of Miami, graduated from there, and he spoke with an accent, but he could read and write like nobody's business. And so I said, wow, if my parents could sacrifice so much for the family, why can't I? And of course we did. And I remember the day that my father and I met Dexter for the first time. He was already a state representative, and reapportionment was happening, which is when you draw new lines for the state house and state senate. And he was upset that his colleagues would not let the public, meaning people like me and my dad, look at the maps. Only the legislators could look. And he said, no, I want everybody to... And you know, he was always a fierce defender of the little guy. Yeah. And little did I know that fighter there, that I was going to end up falling in love with him, and that we got married and then switched him over to the Republican side. But you're right, single member districts. So I had a house and he had a house. So a few days we lived in my house, a few days in his house. And it was great, Keith, because our opponents would always make that into a big issue. Yeah. Oh, you know what, look at them. And so we just said, okay, good. That's your big issue. That's wonderful. Yeah. Remind people that we're in love and that we do live together. So we spent our time in the Florida House of Representatives. Then we ran together for the Florida State Senate. And then he went off to be, as you said, U.S. Attorney. And then Claude Pepper died. So many people were waiting for old Claude Pepper to pass away. They were like vultures going around. And but it's been a life of public service. Dexter and I loved it. And he wrote, he is the legislator who's written more constitutional amendments than anyone. He's got 4 on the books. And the best one is the Victims of Crime Amendment. And my best law, as you point out, was the Florida prepaid tuition plan. We never thought it would be as successful as it has become. And our kids were contract number 7 and number 8 in the state.
Wow, and definitely Dexter's my old law professor. So I was quizzed on all of those constitutional amendments. Yes. And generations of Floridians, thank you for the Florida prepaid college program.
And I would say that Dexter, he was more of an issues-oriented brainiac, and I was more of a people person. Yeah. So we made a good match, and he's still the smartest guy I've ever met. He and my dad, but I'm more people-oriented.
Well, I mean, I think you both have great legislative acumen, but would agree. And going to 1989, you mentioned Claude Pepper, and this legendary member of Congress, he had something to do with Social Security. He either wrote the law or he helped create it. Right? And then he passes away, as one does. Then we talk about facing challenges in life, and there is this huge congressional seat open. There had not been a Cuban American elected, and you get into this race with a ton of Democrats like Rosario Kennedy, who was huge at the time, the Miami City Commissioner, yes. President of the Florida Bar. We won't hold that against him. We'll hold something else against him. And then also talking about the Republican primary, you weren't unopposed either. I mean, you ended up winning with more than 80% of the vote, but you just jumped in there. And I think for folks who are looking to really think about challenges in life and whether to seize an opportunity when it's right in front of them, what lessons can you bring, having gone through a campaign, which I'll let you describe the kind of campaign you went through, that really tested the mettle of everyone involved?
Well, it's hard to know when is the right time, and studies have been done that males always think of themselves as ready for any challenges. But for me, when Claude Pepper passed away, I said, "Oh no, I'm not ready yet. I need to know more about the world. I need to know more about domestic policies." And my dad and Dexter were saying, "No, no, run. The time is now." So males always think you're ready. Females are always thinking maybe now's not the right time. But I put my hat in the ring, and what a rough and tumble campaign that was. Ay, 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 ay. And one of the gentlemen who ended up, I don't even want to call him a gentleman, who ended up winning the Democratic primary, his slogan for this seat was, "This is an American seat."
Yeah.
Now, what does that tell you? It means that he's insinuating that I am not an American, yet he is the bona fide American. I'm a proud naturalized citizen, born in Cuba, very happy and proud of that. Came to the United States with my parents and my brother when I was 8. But I'm as American as apple pie.
Yeah.
So when he said, "This is an American seat," that was a very racist thing to say. And I was just very hurt by that. But anyway, we won.
Yeah.
It was great. Didn't get the results until like 3 a.m. The Dade County election supervisor had passed out on the floor. It was a crazy Florida election, but we won fair and square. And boy, I stayed there for almost 30 years, and I loved every minute of it, Keith. I represented different areas, whether it was State House, State Senate, or Congress. There wasn't 1 inch of South Florida that I did not represent at one time or the other. But it was always for the service of others. And I enjoyed my public service career, and I'm very proud of it, of the many people that we were able to help.
Absolutely. And that really brings me into my next question I had, which was, when you got elected in 1989, it was a majority Hispanic district, Cuban American, folks that were there before Cuban Americans. And the district changed over time.
Yes.
Dramatically so. There was, Hispanics were from, Colombia, Venezuela, Nicaragua, so many other corners of the world, folks who were from any corner of the world. And you've always had this political dexterity, and you kept in touch with your constituents, and you did so in a way that was always authentic and reflected their values. And so,
well, that's very nice of you to say. And Keith,
Yeah.
in our first congressional district, I had a district that had a big percentage of Black voters and Haitian voters, and I was very proud of that. So it was a very eclectic, diverse, heterogeneous district. So, and I was challenged by that, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I think one of the questions listeners and viewers might want to know is, how do you keep being successful in a rapidly changing environment? What did you do to stay in touch and then take actions that you probably would have taken anyway, like TPS for Haitian migrants, immigration reform, climate change, but do so in a way that reflects a rapidly changing world?
Well, for sure, that's an excellent question, because sometimes you get criticized if you change positions. And I say, if you've been in public life for 40 years and you haven't changed any positions on anything, on any issue, you're really not doing your research, and you're really not understanding how things are changing. So I react to the community, and the community reacts to me. So I learned a lot from the community. It's helped me evolve as a member of Congress and as a policymaker, whether that's on immigration, whether it's on marriage equality. You see changes in our society, and it doesn't mean that you're a chameleon, that you change your spots depending on your environment. No, but you understand where people and their circumstances, and that shapes you. If you're not moved by people's stories, you're not paying attention.
Yeah, and what was always interesting to me, especially during the latter years of your time in Congress, was when you had a position, you always stuck to it no matter what time of their political career, but it wasn't always the most popular position. You were the first Republican to endorse marriage equality. You were probably the first Republican to run ads on climate change, for example. And those campaign colors, no one can change those. Brown and yellow.
He was saying that because my father, for some reason, he said, everybody's using red, white, and blue. We'll use this off-color yellow and this off-color brown, and nobody's...
Yes. Oh, my gosh.
I said, those are unusual. He wouldn't let us change it.
It was...
But But yeah, so I didn't always, I felt bad that some of the positions that I had taken, they felt right at the time, but then they didn't feel right for me later. For the Defense of DOMA, Defense of Marriage Act, was Bill Clinton was the president, and marriage was defined as being between a man and a woman. And I felt very much at peace with that. Yeah, that's where I was, that's where the country was, that's where the president was. And then I have never seen an issue, a social issue, change so fast. Just change American society, change the way that we looked at people. And I think it's because we got to know more individuals who were gay or who who wanted the same thing that everybody else had, marriage equality, and they wanted children, and why shouldn't you be allowed to adopt? But it was a sea change, and I felt so much better when I changed my views on that, and it fit my district, it fit my own feelings, it fit my family, and that was, you've got to be willing to change when you see something isn't right. And at that time, and Bill Clinton would be the first to say, it felt like that was the right thing to do. And now looking back, we say, oh my gosh, we didn't let gay folks serve in the military, and you could lose your job. And still now, the reason we need to pass the Equality Act is because there are no federal protections for people who are gay, and people don't understand. You can fire someone because they're gay. It is not a protected class. It's not a protected category. You can say, no, I don't work with gay guys. I don't work with lesbians, and they fire you, and that's it.
Yeah.
It is unbelievable. That's why we need the Equality Act, and it's taken me a long time to get to that point, and now I feel like, how did I ever not feel that way?
Yeah, and once you got to those points too, there were people who said, who were against you, and you stood strong on it. There were millions of dollars in campaign ads spent against you in your last election, which, you've won every election, so, nuts to them. But they were, I guess the question that folks would have is, when you do take new inputs, when you do get new information and evolve your position, and you stand strong against it, even against folks who are with you previously.
That's a good feeling.
It's a good feeling, and how do you just keep standing strong, I suppose?
Yes, and it's so important to live an authentic life, to feel that, okay, this is my life, this is myself. For example, people know I have a transgender son. Rodrigo, he was born Amanda Michelle, lived his life as a female. We brought him up as a female. And then in college, he said, no, I identify as a male. Yeah. Well, that took us a long time as a family to adjust. But even my dad, when he was 83 years old, and we told him, Rigo told him about he was perfectly fine with the decision. He says, I totally understand. And so you can't think that just because you're elderly, you're not going to understand. And because you're young, you will understand. No, it has to do with how accepting you are of other people. So I feel very at ease talking about the issue, and I feel like it's in congruence with my life, with my heart, with my spirit, and with everything that I stand for. And now looking back on those tumultuous days when I thought, oh my gosh, is our family falling apart? What's going to happen? And now I'm so at ease about it, but I understand that it causes a lot of people to feel anxious about it. So I don't take it lightly. I understand that there are people who are troubled by it, but there's not a week that goes by, Keith, let me tell you, where I don't have a parent who'll come up to me and maybe put me aside and say, the situation that you went through with Rigo, I'm going through it with somebody in my family. So they will whisper it, they will tell you about it, and it's more common than people think. And that's the way of the world. So, and I just tell them, it gets better. You're going to get used to it. And what we want our children to be happy, to feel like they can be productive citizens of this world, to know that they can have a job and keep a job, and they won't get harassed, and they won't be victims of a hate crime, and they can live their authentic life, because we don't want kids to get kicked out of their homes, but so many of them do.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think that's the right message to share. And going back a few generations to your parents, you mentioned Abu Kiki and Abu Mandi,
Yes.
lights of the Cuban exile community, demonstrated to so many of us, how to live, with grace under adversity.
That's a good way to phrase it.
Yeah.
Grace under adversity.
Oh,
That's wonderfully put.
Absolutely. Your father wrote around 20 books, which is incredible. But how did these two incredible people working on your campaigns, by the way?
Yes, they really did. My father continued to be the campaign manager. My mom continued to be the volunteer coordinator to the very last.
Yeah. How did they shape how you thought about politics in terms of human rights, in terms of, being someone who fled an oppressive regime, and your sense of, really political right and wrong when it came to human rights?
Excellent question. And they were formative figures for me because, and for Dexter as well, to flee their homeland, to leave everything behind, to know that this oppressive regime, no one wants to live under communism. No one wants to live under socialism, to be told what you do and what you think and where you work and where you live. People reject that. And they taught me that human rights trumps everything. Democracy is the best form of government, and there are absolutes in this life, and that's what they taught me, to stick up for your values, and people will respect you for that. So for me, my parents will always be role models, and I hope that I am, and Dexter hopes that he is as well, that we are role models for our children and now for our grandchildren. So we hope that that's true. Our kids still talk to us. As do our grandkids. So I think we're doing okay.
Your former staff talks to you a lot too. So I think you're okay.
Abu Mandi and Abu Kiki, and I take that as a source of great pride.
It totally is. I'm waiting for your books though.
Okay, we got to do it. You guys... Keith and Maite are going to help me write the books. Come on, we have to do it.
I think you should. Talking about standing up for your values, one of the values that you've always stood up for was diversity of thought. So you are one of CHLI's co-founders. You're the CHLI Madrina. I'm waiting for the magic wand for you there on that one. But, one of the things as an educator I've always been curious about, you obviously had classroom instruction. You were an educator to your staff in many ways, living your values and really showing how one can be effective in public service and private life. But as you continue to see new CHLI cohorts coming through, the internship program, the fellowship program, how do you view educating the next generation through real life experience in Washington, D.C. or anywhere else in a professional program so they can continue to grow? Is it more along the lines of living the experience and sort of letting themselves grow professionally that way, or is it closer to if you read a book, you'll know what it is?
Wow, that is an excellent, deep philosophical question. Thank you for that, Keith.
Yeah,
I'll be pondering what I should have said tonight. I should have said this and that. What I would like to say is, first of all, about CHLI, the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute. I am so proud of this organization. Lincoln is the godfather. Maybe I'm the madrina. But Lincoln created this monster of an organization. And I'm so glad that for CHLI, a diversity of thought is the prime motivator. Yeah. And they want to make sure that all students know that they're welcome, that there's a good path ahead. The young lady who's the producer of this program, she's a CHLI fellow, and we're so proud of people like Nicole. She's the next generation of leaders. And we're proud that CHLI has a hand in molding and shaping those young leaders. And diversity of thought is very important. That's what CHLI stands for. And for me, education has always been a valuable commodity. I got my doctorate at an advanced age. I was already in Congress when I finished my doctorate in education from the University of Miami. But I got my AA from Miami-Dade College, and then my bachelor's and my master's from Florida International University, and my EDD, my doctorate in education from the University of Miami. So I love all of our schools, Miami-Dade, FIU, University of Miami, and I am a lifelong learner. So for me, education is a lifelong endeavor. You never stop growing, you never stop learning, and I think CHLI provides a good landing spot and a takeoff spot for the young leaders of tomorrow. So never stop learning. I learn something new from other people every day. Sometimes it's a negative experience, but it teaches me a lesson. And more often than not, it's a positive experience. So even though I'm an old lady now, I learn every day from everybody.
I think that leads us into our almost last question, which is knowing what you know now that you've had this huge experience, member of Congress, member of the state Senate, member of the Florida House, abuela, mom, wife, what would you tell yourself at like 20 or 21? Like what would you say to that person who had not yet embarked on this journey?
I would have said that is an excellent question, and I thought about this because Keith and I talked right before we started recording what he might ask me. And I would say that I would have expanded my universe by taking courses that maybe I didn't know much about. I would take courses in archaeology, and I would take a course on medicine. And to me, I was an English major and an education major, so I like to read novels, and I didn't read as much as I should have about other fields of study. So I would have said, because I'm always thinking about education, I would have liked to have branded out and spanned my horizons and taken courses and things that I did not feel comfortable about or did not know much about. And you might risk not getting an A because I don't know anything about medicine. And maybe, I was so concerned with making sure that I would get good grades, I wouldn't have cared so much for that. And I would have taken more diverse courses and expanded my knowledge, especially of history, because being married to Dexter, he's such a great historian and professor, and he knows so much about what's happened in the world. And I regret not being as knowledgeable about history, archaeology, medicine, you name it. I needed to have expanded my horizons.
Well, I think you've shaped history, so that's a pretty good second.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
And to close it out on a quote from one of our favorite radio show hosts, "Y tú de verdad crees eso?"
We've got a story to tell,
but we won't tell it here. Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, Illy.
Keith Fernandez.
Thank you for joining us on the Purple Line. Till next time, love you. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Purple Line. You can follow me at _Keith Fernandez on Twitter, and make sure to follow CHLI across all social media platforms at the CHLI for the latest updates.